Welcome to TradeTheMBI.com. This is John, the reporter for the 27th of June, and well, just like we kind of expected, they moved down to the 76% right here. Started to create the turnaround because that wasn't horrible. We were in rising gold. We had already reached the 100%. We began to see the shakeout fading histogram-wise, as well as the yellow crossing below magenta now. But we had the reset of steel coming back from underneath. All it needed to do is pop up a little bit, just to give it enough oomph to keep things from falling apart. We did come all the way back down to that 76%, pretty clean. Again, we point out there really aren't any ES red extremes to fill back in at this particular level. They're much lower. It's going to take a little bit more of a significant reading dip, negative shakeout, get down there in that low right here, 2800 range. So that would be a much more significant move. We kind of figured that at some point you would get weakness. More likely than not, you end up rolling this one, trying to make another attempt at the highs, and if we get a failure in between there, then you would expect to get much more of a drop at this point. Not looking at it being that dramatic at this stage. Likewise, we could see the DOC spread started back up here. We had our little retest, but with the steel reset now crossing above red. Orange continues to drop. That could be significant, and we've been in straight gold here. You can see it rising cleanly on the shakeout indicator. I would expect before this histogram goes negative for it to turn around. We'll see. This could be the early start of it with pre-market move. Not too shocking. Nothing happening with the euro within this setup, but it's been in decent buy setup overall. It's just a matter of that little steel dip below caused a little softness. Not too uncommon. Oil right at that 50% peak. It did pop positive for the shakeout there. We saw this early when it was crossing with the yellow over here, magenta on the shakeout. While still below the negative 13, those tend to have a little bit more legs, and sure enough, this got us all the way to the 50% mark here. Is it a catastrophic move for? No, I mean, we're coming off super low bases, but if there's a decent inventory supply, that could shift dramatically. This is why you see more action moving into things like Bitcoin, and certainly it's been the case with gold. It also had that little cross right here, faced a little softness within, still bullish overall configuration. We might see a break of green coming below red. That could just cause it to move a little bit more sideways. So let's look at the 5K though, because I think it was a really interesting day. Let me see if I can back up a little bit. We started off with this nice monster run that came off the buys early, and we got to a really solid peak plus, and that's when the first DOC spread started. But it came with a reset of the steel coming below, so the expectation was that, well, you could get a pretty quick turnaround with this. And sure enough, right here where it crossed red, began the turn, and then it was, within the next bar, and then we had the crossover of steel over that orange when it's turning around. It's one of those you just kind of can expect, especially since it happened right at the 50%. Produced a nice little upturn before a beautiful DOC spread with the red below zero. So look at the dynamic difference, almost similar in price. I mean, a little bit more and it would have been there, but that rollover right underneath the zero DOC level, and sure enough, boom, produces the decline. Now, while that signaled that you should break the lows, which it ended up doing. What was interesting about it is we did come through right here. We had crossed below with the steel, and that was an indication we could see another pop coming through this. What I usually look for in that particular case to signal that it may be over would be the steel coming back below cyan. In this case, came right to the edge of it and then just sort of skirted it as the new buy configuration came in the turnaround, and that led to a little mini pop. But at this particular point, we started to see a little bit of the weakness, and then you ended up with the multi-cross all at the same point, where you had green going below red, cyan moving up, steel crossing below. I love it when those all happen, particularly when they're happening on kind of muddied and weak shakeout in this particular case. And that just led to a little bit more softening back down to the zero again. So it was, what people would be looking at, they call this like a double bottom and stuff like that, but not really accurate given what it is. Now for me, it gets interesting when you have these muddied areas where you've broken below with the lower DOC red. What I'm looking for is this DOC red high to be broken. So even if I'm getting price that's moving above, but I'm not getting a matching correspondence, I've got a bit of a divergence. I can highlight this a little bit more. If we draw, you can see the line. You're clearly not reaching the same. That gave me the clear indication that we were going to continue to break down. So even within this 5K, I've got gold here, also below the 50%, which usually for me tells me, hey, I potentially have problems unless I can get that either super strong shakeout or, in this case, DOC red moving or breaking above a previous peak or even into a higher zone. And that doesn't take place, and so I was pretty confident that the lows would break. And so even when additional shorts came right before the break of the low, I was more than happy to take it. I was expecting us to go red for the day on that because you would want to come back to where, oh yeah, that's right, the pre-market move. And sure enough, that's pretty much what we did. They checked right below to see if there were any stops below that. Probably wasn't too much volume because it pretty much stabilized right there. Though, no real reset at this particular point, giving you the indication that you would have any sustained uprun from any of these signals that come and give you buys. And then what you look for right here, you get the dip below. That usually warns me, okay, it's moved below science, so maybe I'm going to have a little bit of weakness. And your earliest up pop point right there, letting you know with the steel crossing above cyan, you're just waiting for this orange to get out of the continuation zone, which it did. It came down, pop, but then they immediately reversed it right after testing new lows, making sure the supply wasn't there, didn't find any new supply, and then that caused the current upshoot. It does have a few positive extremes, but the reason this was, I thought, very significant because recognizing this failure of new peaks as well as the no reset portion can let you stay into positions much longer. What I look for when I do have a reset, where like in this case the steel comes down, if it goes above cyan and then back below, that effectively negates what you've got from a reset move. You can see a similar thing happen here where this one comes above, and then as soon as it crosses, just so happened to be at the same time we had a DOC spread, which just makes that DOC spread all that much better. That creates the weakness. You're going to see this a lot, particularly in decent runs, because what will happen is, say this steel is coming across, it may cross 3 or 4 different times. The steel coming below for weakness, comes back above for strength. And it becomes a really good cursor for not getting caught in some of the little dips unless you want to be active. I mean, it's just one of those things. If you want to really be active in your trade, then sure, you can take every one of these little pops for a couple points. But you're going to have to be fluid with them, knowing you don't have that reset because the bullish move isn't going to last. And that's a critical feature of that. So when you're looking at short term with the potential of, pushing it into longer term reading, definitely something to look at. And the same thing applies even on the bigger time charts. In fact, sometimes it becomes a little bit more effective because you'll get a situation like this where it dips below real quick and then makes an immediate turn, right as you're getting to the base, and then boom, you get your crossover. That lets you know, hey, bullish time. If it corresponds with the rising green, usually you get what? Ooh, yep, nice bounce. In this case, forming a P2 on 50K. So that's worth noting. As always, though, I will update future charts, but I just wanted to point that one out because I think that's something we've talked about before, but in this context, it really gives you a clean idea on how you can really stay with a little bit more protracted idea of short configurations and or even broader ones when you know that like you have a DOC from coming red DOC up at this level and it just continues to make declines lower and lower until finally it overtakes it. Well, that was easy to see right here, right as it got into the zero, which was just above the 50% anyway. So it can be effective. As always, though, trade well. We will talk again later.